Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't grow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
Gorillaz and the feature Planet of the Apes.
Is that how that goes?
I believe it's more something like that.
I remember something about a Snoop Dogg.
Boss Dog.
Ah, shit.
Please.
My name is Eric. I'm here with Michael, and there's an ape-like double feature happening today. Humans defending ourselves from invasion or something. We're doing Attack the Block, but also The Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that title is one of the one of the most difficult titles I think you could ever have for a film. How many times are you allowed to put "of the" in your title?
Rise of the Planet of the Apes is going second, and the reason it's going second is because while I think that Attack the Block works just fine going second and maybe even better, I'm worried that no one will get that far in the title before they pass out.
Right,
they
that's
won't
true.
know we're doing two movies.
Rise of the Planet of the Skip. That's what's going to happen. And you can skip. That's the beauty of double feature is that we tend to spoil the films. We spoil the fuck out of them. That's kind of our favorite thing to do. We don't give a fuck, brap. So if you want to just skip right to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that's why we have chapters embedded in our adorable little iTunes feed. Hello, iTunes.
Yeah, so we're
scroll and chapter.
Yeah, no, everybody gets it. I'm sure people get it.
I'm just making sure.
100% confidence that people get it. We're going to do Attack the Block first, and then we're going to do the one with the apes.
The monkey one, yeah.
Now, as we discussed previously on Double Feature, you're fine if you haven't seen the other ape movies.
Yeah.
That's totally okay.
You kind of get a little, there's a few little bonuses if you've seen Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you haven't, it's not a huge deal. So you still have time. There's still time. There's approximately 15 to 20 minutes for you to watch the film. Attack the Block we're going to move into right away. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to hit pause, or maybe you'll skip and come back somewhere in the future.
Before next week.
Attack the Block is a Joe Cornish movie.
Yeah.
I didn't know who this was.
Okay.
Joe Cornish apparently worked a lot on behind-the-scenes stuff for Edgar Wright.
Factual.
So, I mean, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and we've talked a lot about
He was involved
Edgar
with Scott Pilgrim too, wasn't he?
You know what? I don't know that much. I know this is a film from the producers of Hot Fuzz, which they tout very boldly.
Sure. Well, I mean, Nick Frost is in it. It's he has a very cameo role.
Joe Cornish did some stuff for Little Britain as well. The popular BBC comedy series Little Britain. The thing that I'm most excited about, wrongfully I would say excited about, is going through these phases of music. I know you and I both have sort of a trip hop thing where we forget it exists and it comes back around. I do that with big beat stuff every once in a while. Stuff like The Prodigy, where I forget that it's amazing and then it just shows up and kicks ass. The Basement Jaxx stuff, they do the score for this movie. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
It's all sorts of buzzy and synthy and big beat, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
What's not fantastic is the music within the film, which is much different than the score.
Are you speaking of hi-hats? Up-and-coming hit single?
Yeah, I just think it maybe could use a little bit of tweaking. Maybe a dubstep remix.
Yeah, that's always the answer.
Wub.
Dubstep just got 60% heavier.
So this movie's kind of it's a sci-fi gamer sort of take on the Mulberry Street, or more recently on Double Feature, I guess, the Assault on Precinct 13 type of...
Wow, those are good. That's a good pair of flicks.
Isn't that? Yeah, that's a good couple of those. I mean, Assault on Precinct 13, we talked about that being the blueprint for the locked down in a bunker, defending or attacking, perhaps, the block kind of template for your film. A tried and true method that has been really given a lot of different variations. None I've ever seen quite like this.
Yeah, Attack the Block is really weird because I think the one choice they make that continues to be surprising throughout the film is treating the 5 kids as adults.
Yeah.
Those kids are adults. They have full-fledged character bases. Mm-hmm. Everything about them is self-driven. They're not there as backup for the adult characters.
Right.
They drive the film themselves. So when you see them get violently mutilated, it's still a kid getting his head bitten off.
It's monsters goring children.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. Yeah, and I have a confession to make to you. And I say this only in case anybody could perhaps sympathize with my situation. I think this may be the 5 most annoying protagonists in the history of double feature.
I really, really like Moses. I think
by the end of the film, and this is weird, I'm never going to say I'm not annoyed by the protagonists. I don't want to give them that much credit. But I think we start off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, I think
they're robbing this poor woman, and I just hate them. And through the movie, I go, there's nothing this movie can do. I just want to see the children gored, and I want it to be over, and I hate these kids. And by the end, I'm totally there with it. I mean, hey, way to go, movie. It's weird to start off the film, and I mean, it's this group of kids somehow manages to make Nick Frost the person you identify most with. Yeah. I don't know how that ever happens in a movie, but especially with his track jacket and long stringy hair.
I don't know what the hell.
Great personal choices, Mr. Frost.
Absolutely.
But besides the robbery victim, who I believe may be the only good, decent human being alive.
About, Sam, the med student grad.
Jodie Whittaker's character. Yeah, she just has it rough. She has a bad fucking day. She gets robbed. She's trapped in the police van. You know, in the beginning, I'm feeling some really serious Harry Brown kind of vibes.
Sure.
And not just the obvious across the pond thing, but the whole lone woman group of fucking... Do they have a problem over there with teenage violence? What's the deal over there?
Yeah, I think Harry Brown isn't just a made-up plot. I think that's a serious issue. I think that in the lower income... I mean, that's what the block is, right?
Sure.
For anybody who's not familiar, the term the block that's the English term for what we would call a housing project.
Uptown? Oh, I mean housing.
Yeah. The block is our Cabrini Green.
What used to be Cabrini Green, anyways. And now there's a very clean train station and lots of flourishing businesses over there. Lots of flourishing businesses. Well, so we broadcast from probably the most gang-ridden part of the northeast side of Chicago, which, granted, is the northeast side of Chicago is the least gang-ridden part. But we're talking now in the center of some fairly hefty gang territory. Sure. Are they all I don't look at them when we're walking around here. I just try and get here as fast as possible and record and then go somewhere else. Are they kids? Are they 12?
I don't know if they are around here. I know that the reason they're so young in the film is, first off, Moses is the leader.
Sure.
And he's also the one who has no guidance. He essentially lives on his own. He has the same bedding from when he was 9.
And is 15.
Sure. I mean, he has no moral guidance. He is his own parent.
Yeah.
And he's probably been the leader of these other youths who they show all the varying lifestyles that these kids are growing up in. Some of them more strict than others. And
well, you get a glimpse when they all dash home to get their weapons.
Right, exactly.
Which is a great uniform 35 seconds in each household. Check in, see who's yelling at them, get the weapon, check out.
Fool grandma, talk to mom, walk the dog.
Yeah, and then they all come back together, and you're right, it is a huge tribute to these characters, treating them as adults, that they can hang out with Sam's character, and it doesn't feel like someone's babysitting.
Right.
Besides me, when I meet these kids, I feel like I'm babysitting. Yeah. But aside from that, the characters in the film, they hang out with Nick Frost, they hang out with Jodie Whittaker. It doesn't even faze me. I don't realize these are separate age groups. I just think one is a group of thugs and robbers, and the other is a poor woman who has not even Stockholm Syndrome. She's just done with them and has to be there to survive.
You mentioned earlier, other than Sam, there are no particularly good clans or groups of people.
Yeah,
we have
right.
the protagonist group, Moses and Biggs and all their other cute little names. And then there's Guerrilla Wolves.
Yeah, right.
And then there's the cops.
Well, and the 2 young kids as well.
Oh, yeah,
who
that's
wander
true. There's
around.
Props
The
and
9.5-year-old kids.
Yeah. But you have these guerrilla wolves who are obviously the insatiable, hungry beasts that you're running from.
Yeah.
But you don't hate them the way you hate the police.
No.
Especially at the end when the police are
Isn't that
like,
weird?
These are poor ruffians, they're criminals.
Yeah, because I feel like the police are, when I said Sam was the only decent human being, I feel that way, even though the police are doing their job.
Sure.
And really, they're hauling away ruffians at the end.
But for whatever
their
reason,
job.
they're also being cocks. And I can't figure out why
you don't like
feel
them
that
because
way.
the protagonists don't like them. Okay, so I had one other question about it. So Sam's job is to be a nurse or whatever. She's a med student or post-med student or the Hippocratic Oath, which I don't even know if that's global or a United States thing.
Yeah.
But just to cover our asses here for international listeners, and I'm kind of curious. I don't know anything about medicine, but let us know, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com, if that is in fact global. It's a sort of ethical oath that doctors take. Does that include patching up your attackers? I mean, if someone was to assault you or rob you...
Yeah, that's a good question, especially in an immediate sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you would want to protect your own health and safety first. But at the point where they're in her apartment or wherever the fuck they are, and clearly, one has a wound, is she forced by her ethical oath that she has taken to fix that kid up? Or is she just kind of being nice? Do doctors just like to fix people? Is it good practice for her?
Yeah, I want to say that
does she want to save the earth? I mean, what's going on in her head here?
Well, why can't she just save the earth starting with the children in England?
That's the other thing I want to know in the movie is you could save the children in England. You don't have to waste jet fuel to go.
I thought that was a brilliant point. But back to the Hippocratic Oath.
Right.
Assuming it does exist in England, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it does.
That's fine.
I feel like, she wasn't in danger at that point. They had, hands off. They weren't, no knives to her throat, no gun to her head. I feel like in that situation, it's probably the ethical thing to at least stop him from bleeding out, right?
I don't even know if that's what the Hippocratic Oath covers. It could be something completely different.
As far as I know, which is very little. That's not
which is none, which is also where I'm at. Good.
I feel like...
Speculate wildly, please.
I feel like it does cover that, and she probably should help, but I also feel like it's a certain situation where no one would necessarily hold it against her if she weren't to fix them. However, just because of Pest's one little quip, I hold her boyfriend accountable for traveling to Africa to help children, and I can't figure out why, but it makes so much sense to me that he could be helping these poor children.
Well, also, he could have been helping her. It almost seemed to me like the subtext there might have been, yeah, we robbed you, but where was your boyfriend to defend you? What a prick. Clearly, he's really at fault here.
Yeah. He's
so I don't know how we're not talking about guerrilla wolves this entire time.
Yeah.
Let's get to that. The fucking creature design here. So these things are from space, but they're kind of, I don't know if they're spiky or
I think
fuzzy
they're just, in my head, they're really soft.
They're really
very
soft,
furry, and very soft. Yeah,
sure. Why not? They're all black, and they have these
sonic teeth,
glowing. They're sonic teeth. Yeah, they're sonic dubstep teeth. They glow this kind of aqua blue, pale blue TV light color. Instead of having eyes that glow, it's the teeth that glow, and you don't realize that at first. And the characters point that out. But as far as design, it's such an interesting choice. You never see this in creature design ever.
They're just black.
Yeah, and the film's at night. Dark black creatures at night. I mean, how's that for concealing your monster?
Yeah.
Oh, we're just going to be fighting at night. The whole thing will take place at night. And I don't know, the creatures can be matte black.
Right, it's literally hiding your monsters in plain sight. Even when they're in a pack and you just see a room full of guerrilla wolves.
Sure.
You don't see anything.
Yeah, you
see
have no
blue
idea
teeth and blackness.
Well, somehow you do still get a sense of how many there are. I don't know how you do that because you can't tell one apart from another. I guess it's the number of sets of teeth.
Yeah, you count the glowing blue.
But there's no texture, there's no it's just straight flat blackness, which probably made it really easy to animate and accomplish all the visual effects. So it's a smart decision, but also, I mean, I guess I'm just amazed that no one's taken this route before.
Yeah, it's always surprising when you see something that you've never seen before, especially on something as off the map as Attack the Block.
Yeah, here we are this far in. We mentioned Assault on Precinct 13 and the obvious precursors that have come before this. And it seems like nobody has thought of this genetic makeup.
Right.
Nobody's thought, well, let's use really sci-fi creatures in a very, I meant that kind of that techno gaming way.
Yeah.
It is the sonic teeth and the sci-fi sounds they emanate, almost like some kind of future robots.
Right.
And what do they call them? The blackest black?
Yeah.
I think is the shade, which is also the shade of my hair that I get, is blackest black. And that allows you to not spend any time animating. Don't waste any time on that.
Sure.
I hope none of the animators hear this because they probably labored for days.
We're not knocking the result.
No, the result is fantastic.
Yeah, it's important to say we're not knocking the result. We're commenting on the ingenuity.
We're not bashing it any more than the characters when they say, if we were making something up, don't you think we'd make up something better than aliens? I think that's great too, though. Anytime you have a wild story, just throw out, come on, if I were going to make something up, I would not waste time being this creative.
Yeah, exactly.
Which also reminds me, when you ask the question, where did the creatures come from? Obviously the government. Clearly clearly that's where the creatures came from. The idea that the government created them, I don't know, to oppress the...
to wipe them out. They've already oppressed them with drugs and guns.
Right. Well, that was first they sent drugs, then they sent guns, now they're sending space aliens, biological warfare, whatever they think it is. It's good to see how universal conspiracy is like that. That same, God, when we fucking talked about loose change and 9/11 conspiracies and... That comes up all the time with JFK and the moon hoax and all that stuff. Things that the United States government is trying to pull the wool over people, which is just complete nonsense, right? These are cases where the mainstream story, at least for the most part, is pretty much what fucking happened.
Yeah.
Lone gunmen and landing on the moon. And
terrorists.
Religious fucking nut jobs,
Better put.
But in London, apparently, same problem. The government is trying to keep us down.
Yeah.
And they're putting fluoride in our drinking water. And man, this is I've been dragging out the same 3 United States conspiracies. I need to do some research on London-based conspiracies.
Well, maybe Anaconda malt liquor gives you in London
I think that's
still
United States based. Although it is another great conspiracy theory and one much akin to what they're spouting in this movie.
Right, but I think the reason that I have such a hard time disagreeing, I disagree, and I know that it's a buried joke in the film, but Moses's intensity throughout the entire movie makes it so hard to disagree with any of his decisions.
Yeah, right.
He is solemn, and he has the fucking war scars on the side of his face.
Right from the beginning.
He's got your nondescript baseball cap.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Way to go on that movie. Maybe that's a trend over there. You don't know. Over here, the stupid trend is to leave stickers on your fucking hat.
And I just love...
Maybe they matted them all out. Do you think that could have been done in post?
I don't know.
Mat out all the stickers.
That's possible.
Sorry, you were trying to make an actually valid point.
Well, I've seen... This is the second time I've watched the film. And I remember from the first time, the moment, the slow motion... running down to Moses's apartment. That
badassery.
Whole fucking Oh
After
my God.
the scene where all of the creatures are obscured in white smoke instead of obscured in blackness. It's that same tactic. It's just the variation that makes it so fucking cool.
Yeah, I just remember adoring Moses just slow motion running down the hallway.
It's his hero moment. Well, and that's another thing from Assault on Precinct 13 is... you have these unlikable characters, and that's a big staple of these this whole genre.
And then they end up getting moments of absolute redemption.
Yeah, total glory.
That's how the film ends. Moses finally smiles, right? That's the beat the film ends on, and you don't realize it until he smiles, but you've never seen it.
Yeah, well, it's such a side little, I mean, it's what you call a smile.
Sure.
I am smiling. That's the joke he is there, right? So just as a quick note wrapping up then, you didn't feel any of that apprehension towards the characters the first time you saw them?
I think I did the first time.
Okay, so that's something that, because I'm thinking now, this was my first time seeing this. And I feel like now that I've gotten to the end and know that journey, I could go back and watch it and not spend so much time wanting to see creatures gore children.
Right. Well,
that's probably not true, but you know what I mean.
The other big thing that I noticed is that the first time I watched the film, it was 5 ghetto children, and by the end, I just didn't know which one was alive and which one was dead.
And which one was hiding in a dumpster the entire film.
But watching it the second time, I totally differentiated. I knew them all by name. Like it became a lot clearer who was doing what and why, and whether or not hamster parkour was going to play a part in their role.
Hamster parkour. It's really come to this. Let's talk about Planet of the Apes.
Rise of the Planet.
How many apes are going to rise during this Planet of the...
It depends on where in the film...
I ran out of words.
It depends on where in the film you come in at.
I want to talk about everything not science related first.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about science a lot. Big fucking surprise on this show. John Lithgow.
Yeah, we have Trinity.
Thanks for that. Third Rock from the Sun is obviously the more appropriate reference here, given the science fiction background.
That's true.
Not so much the comedic stylings, actually. I'm glad people are recognizing that he has some chops.
Yeah.
And, he's getting parts and things, because I missed him for wherever the fuck he was for a decade or more.
Right.
Yeah, and he drives one of the pieces of science. Most of the things I want to talk about, I guess, are driven by some kind of treatment of science. The other thing is Redwoods.
Yeah.
Is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I had a chance to film when I was in Cupertino for a little bit of time. I went there, and I actually spent 2 days filming there. My footage doesn't look nearly as good as Planet of the Apes. I wasn't intending to make anything I could show anyone, but now I feel like I've spent enough time talking about all this fucking filming I've been doing and not showing anyone. And now it's shown up on the show with Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
I got to cut some of that stuff together. Redwoods and Basin and all that stuff out there. It's even more spectacular than they have the opportunity to show you in this movie. It has just, man, at night it's fucking creepy, and it made me want to make horror films, and the road is windy and crazy out there, and these trees are first of all, the ground is red, which is weird.
Yeah.
And then the trees are so tall, they, what's the terminology? Blot out the sun, I believe.
Yeah. Our bees will blot out the sun.
Yeah. And it gives this great spotlighting to things like, I've talked about in the David Fincher movies and in all these movies where we have, narrow pools of light. Usually your lighting outside sucks. It's the sun. That's it. That's all you get. Unless you shoot your movie at night with glowy creatures. But even during the day, the trees are so fucking big that it looks like you're in an underground cellar.
Right.
You just have these dark, areas with just a pool of light coming in out of nowhere. It's fucking gorgeous. So they take advantage of that, but then they also have all this modern, futuristic kind of... It's a modern glimpse into the future, these scientific facilities. And then the... I'm going to call it the ape prison.
Yeah.
Where we also spend a good section of the film.
I think when I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
I saw it the week it came out. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I wasn't expecting a film as good as this.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
I was expecting, a run-of-the-mill... We're at the age where Hollywood is just fucking shitting out sequels, prequels, and remakes.
Yeah.
And
I think people have been feeling that for 20 or 30 years, though.
And I just wasn't expecting... Planet of the Apes was not something... I like the original. We covered it. We talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Planet of the Apes was not something I was expecting ever to have something that I felt was a film I would show people, that I would tout as a wonderful thing. But this film does two things that I think are fucking brilliant.
Great.
One is the science, and we'll get to that. but 2
apes. Is that where you're going?
And just the fucking battle scenes.
Sure.
The one on the bridge. I just remember in the theater being this fucking incredible war zone.
Oh, for sure.
And apes with spears. And the one thing that I recall is I knew the plot. I knew about the whole Alzheimer's cure going in, and our friend Rob, he was skeptical of this one. He had this one qualm with the idea of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is people have guns and the military. Apes have maybe rocks.
Muscle. They got a lot of muscle. They're scary.
And he just kept saying, I don't understand why they couldn't have just shot them all. And then we went into the movie and we watched the film.
Didn't we?
It answers the question flat out. You weren't prepared for how advanced these apes were. They were tactical. They were smart.
They were tactical, yeah.
And that
they use the fucking smart. Yeah. It's not just apes know how to talk to each other and they're mad.
Yeah.
They're fucking tactical. Yeah. They're smart apes now. That's the thing.
And they were underestimated.
Yes.
And that's what leads to the rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's a little bit of science and a lot of pride in the ability of mankind. And that just kind of I believe in 8th grade it was called hubris. And that led to mankind's downfall.
Well, for whatever reason, I didn't anticipate actually getting to see that battle in there. It's something that, at the very least, you don't know what that battle would even fucking look like until you see it. How is this movie going to portray that if you're going to see it at all? What does it look like when a bunch of monkeys attack a bunch of humans? I mean, we kind of saw stuff like that. We flat out fucking saw that in Planet of the Apes, right?
They're riding on horseback, which they have an homage to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of homages. They have the rocket launch that the Charlton Heston or Mark Wahlberg, depending on your canon, is on.
Yeah, I guess.
They also have the "Get your dirty paws off me, you damn dirty ape."
I always remember "goddamn" being in there somewhere, but I think I infused that myself.
And that's a cute little kitschy line. And you also get the beginning of the apes talking, which watching it today felt a little bit cheesier than in the theater, because the theater I shit a brick. I was terrified.
I'm sorry to hear about that. Yeah, no, I think the voices and everything were handled really well. I mean, the whole thing, I have, this is the odd part, is I was prepared to go into this, and, for as much as you and I talk about CG, and I almost feel like I need to apologize every time it even comes up, it is fun for me to watch the best that CG has to offer.
Yeah.
I'm so into the craft of filmmaking and being interested at how people who know what the fuck they're doing do this, that even if I disagree fundamentally with use CG, whatever, this, we're going to have a movie entirely focused around these apes. We're going to make them all in CG. That is an artistic decision. I'm signing up to see that. And you know what? That's really interesting to me to watch. All right, here's where technology's brought us up to this point.
This is possibly the best looking CG I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to not be true 6 months from now or 12 months from now or whatever.
We'll go back, and when we get to year 13 and we start forgetting what films we've done on the show.
And we do this again.
We'll do Jurassic Park with Rise of the Planet of the Apes in a CG versus puppets episode.
Oh, that'll be good.
And Rise of the Planet of the Apes will fail in comparison to the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
There's something about the imagination of that, though, that, I find particularly charming. Just something about filming those scenes and imagining them without CG.
Right.
It gets me back in that thing where I'm thinking about the real people behind the camera and how they're doing this. That kind of, re-employing creative problem solving to get a scene done.
Right.
Instead of just dismissing CG as the lazy crutch, suddenly it became this thing where, okay, our director has said we're going to use CG for apes. That's cool. How the fuck do we do that? This ape is going to swing around the house and we're going to do a long take.
Follow the ape with the
how
camera?
The fuck does that happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so CG's been around long enough that everybody's heard all the qualms about it. Mm-hmm. And I think public opinion on it is just mostly that it's shit.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's pretty much on board that it's both accepted and crappy.
Yeah.
It doesn't age well. And so we're looking at all these new techniques to challenge ourselves. And so here is the best, we have to offer, which is important here because we're following the apes. They are the characters here.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. James Franco, not really the main character.
That was one of the most shocking things to me when I saw it, is not only are you following Andy Serkis ape, Caesar, but you care that you're following Andy Serkis.
Sure. You don't for a second go back to the humans. I want to see what they're doing.
You're bored.
Yeah, right.
You're bored when they're cutting back to James
Get
Franco
out of the humans.
and
I want
Nurse
to see...
Girlfriend.
Yeah.
You want to go back and watch Caesar and Maurice. I know all their names.
You do. Well, see, that's a testament to this, right? Well, and some of the younger stuff I'm not as impressed with as when Caesar is Caesar, right? When he's doing that creepy under the brow Kubrick kind of look.
Yeah.
Especially that when the kids are bringing in the beers and stuff, and he's just staring them. It's scary.
The thing about that actually is when they first announced Rise of the Planet of the Apes, at least in a really public scale, because you and I find out about movies 10 years before they come out, and then they don't come out till 20 years after that.
Yeah, right.
But when they first really announced Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and they first showed the apes, it was just a 3-second clip where Caesar follows.
Oh, you know what? I saw that.
Guard
yeah.
And that was so fucking creepy.
Yeah. Well, because that's one of the big things is what are they going to do about the apes?
Well, they say they're going to be all CG, but they won't look crappy.
Yeah, right. Oh, I've heard that before, right?
Mm-hmm. And they really nailed it. I mean, the eyes alone are one of the...
Well, the eyes is that's a big plot component, right? That leads into a lot of the science stuff when...
Bright eyes.
Precisely. And that has to be a focal point, too, because there's a little bit of... I mean, when it's all apes talking to each other in sign language, you need a lot of visual cues, too, and the fact that the movie ends on a kind of a triumphant note, even though the apes are beating us down and we know what's to come, that is, again, that says, hey, this was a movie where you followed the apes around. You wanted them to win, right? Because they're your main characters. But it talks about that science, too. So one of the ways you enticed me into watching this on the show, I hadn't seen this one either today, was by basically telling me the thing I had feared. I use you as a barometer a lot of times for when movies do things that scare me in regards to science or religion, and I think they might make me angry.
Right.
And as much as I love to challenge myself, something like Planet of the Apes, I could give or take seeing that in a theater, and I didn't think there would be anything to it. And if it was going to fucking bash science, I just didn't give a shit. But then to find out it's amazing, one. And two, well, let's talk about the science a little bit.
Yeah, well, I
guess we talk about treatment first, and then kind of how does the movie tackle science, and then what is it saying about man playing God or what have you?
The whole brilliance of Rise of the Planet of the Apes is in the initial rationale for why the apes have become intelligent.
Okay.
And it's simple and it's brilliant in its purity. And it's that...
Nuclear war.
Right.
Government experiment.
No. None of that.
Not a government experiment.
No, there's a scientist whose father has Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So he discovers a cure for Alzheimer's, tests it on a chimpanzee, and the nature of the virus strain that they use is such that it recreates brain synapses and recreates brain cells and nervous tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ape that they tested on has a baby without Alzheimer's.
Right.
And that begins to create a super intelligent species of ape.
Under the heading of Big Pharma.
Sure.
Why not? I'll take Big Pharma. That's fine. We got to have a villain somewhere, right?
That's true.
Okay, fine. Big Pharma. No, but you're right. I mean, when they're explaining neurogenesis, I have to imagine that it's a film, so the science is, let's say, sketchy.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like they're just bullshitting me.
Right.
That's how I usually feel when films are trying to do science-y chat.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, well, the tissue does something with the chemicals and the vaccines cause autism. All right, moving on. It's just like, God damn it, movie. Don't fucking insult me. And so this is really throughout the movie. They talk on a level where the science isn't mentioned a lot, but when it is, I don't feel like I'm really even giving it a suspension of disbelief.
Right.
I feel like what they're telling me is, hey, we found a chemical or a virus that can regrow brain tissue.
Sure.
So all you have to believe is that exists.
Right.
There's no scientific mumbo jumbo here. They're just telling you what they have. They're breaking it down pretty easy for you.
The only other, I guess, pill that might be tough to swallow if you're really being picky is that apes have a better immune system than people.
They don't even have to have a better one so much as a different one.
That's true, yeah.
That's why you always hear about, we cured AIDS in mice. Hooray, every 6 months we're curing AIDS in mice. People still have AIDS. We're built differently. We do these tests on animals, and oh wait, isn't this the part where we're supposed to get into how testing on animals is inherently wrong and science is evil?
They don't test on animals or
man
CG.
Shouldn't play God.
CG animals.
I'm so happy that this isn't just I always thought that Planet of the Apes was a story about how we shouldn't be cruel to the animals or how the apes fight back or they put us in cages or...
How does it feel? How does it feel when you're on the other side of the bars?
Yeah, precisely. This is a movie where they wouldn't kill that baby ape out of compassion.
Yeah.
It was compassion that started the rise.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was the fact that we didn't want to cage the little ape or that we wouldn't euthanize it. I mean, who has the heart, besides myself, to save humanity by euthanizing a tiny, tiny ape?
Well, and it's not just that the apes got smarter. It's also that we accidentally poisoned ourselves.
Well, that too,
and created a global pandemic based on the stronger strain of the same virus.
Sure.
And that's how people died. Apes didn't even kill everybody.
No,
there's really no bad guy.
No.
People made a mistake. Fortunately for us, apes survived, right? The best we can hope for is that the apes will re-evolve back into people.
Sure.
And we'll get to, continue on our merry motherfucking way.
That we will branch back from a that they will become the common ancestor, I guess, between future apes and once again humans.
Bizarre.
Yeah, highly likely that's going to happen.
The other option's Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, God, never mind. The other thing I like is that we don't blame science for the apes getting smarter and overthrowing the humans.
Right.
But we also don't blame science for the conflict between the apes and the humans. This seems a lot more like a war between factions. It's not unlike any war between class or religion or any kind of tribe, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the apes got smarter and they became another thing to compete with us.
Sure.
Just like if a fucking continent sprang up out of the ocean, they might have regional conflicts with whoever they sprang up by.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a race of apes becomes really smart. There's a class struggle there.
Sure.
And so we go to war. And that makes sense to me. That makes sense. And it also, we did the other Planet of the Apes. Yeah. I'll swallow a story about science, blah, blah, evil. That's fine. But this is way more interesting to me. It's totally so creative. It's just, apes want the rights that people have.
Sure.
And
apes
people
want
are
freedom.
Probably hesitant to give them that because we were used to putting them in cages because that made sense before they were smart.
Yeah.
No one's doing anything wrong. Yeah. We're all doing the right thing.
I mean, the film goes to show why apes need to be in cages. Yep. Caesar eats a man's finger.
Right.
But then he won't let Buck kill the cop.
Well, that's another great point is that when the killing starts, they make a point to say they learned that from us. Caesar learned his restraint the hard way. He did his time.
Right.
He spent time in ape jail.
And he reformed.
He did. And he tries to get the others not to kill the humans. But this is just what happens when you have warring factions and things get out of control. So it's a story about the apes and the humans finding themselves in conflict, not because of anything man inherently did wrong, but stuff got kind of fucked up.
Right.
And there were some really angry apes and some pretty angry humans.
And unfortunately, no one had planned for the situation.
Well, yeah, it turns out we didn't really know this was coming. And so, War of the Apes.
I'm really glad that we not only got a sci-fi day on Double Feature, but also a brand new film day on Double Feature.
Hooray.
2 things we
Yeah, brand new sci-fi films. When does that even happen?
Yeah, exactly.
First of all, hey, 2 sci-fi films that are relatively new, and we can talk about them on the show. I feel really accomplished. We have a website, doublefeatureshow.com. There's stuff on the website, the old Planet of the Apes, good old Charlton Heston, Planet of the Apes.
If you want to go and look at Edgar Wright, who we mentioned back in the Attack the Block, we have the little director's menu on the side.
Purposefully avoided a lot of that stuff because this isn't an Edgar Wright movie, and we have plenty of those on the show. Doublefeatureshow@gmail.com for telling us about medicine in Europe and whatever other bizarre trivia you want to send right on over. Your take on science and apes. And, you know, a lot of people will listen to this show, and I make these offhanded remarks about people shouting at the Zunes or whatever I'm making terrible jokes about at the...
Whomever you choose to alienate at the time.
Yeah, let's call them non-jokes because they don't have a punchline, nor are they funny. If you feel like you have something to say, we got something wrong, you strongly disagree, you think we're awesome, whatever you want to tell us, preferably the last one, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. We want to hear that stuff. We have a thing on the internet, and a large reason we don't just let it sit on a hard drive somewhere and bother to actually put it on the internet is so other people can hear it, because we might be kind of curious what those people think. It's good to have a little feedback.
Speaking of feedback,
it's that time again, isn't it?
It is that time again.
Okay.
So we've constantly been asking for your feedback on this.
Always welcome.
This
Keep
journey, this project.
We're going to reevaluate at the end of the year and figure out how this went.
But next week is another chapter in the exciting Rocky-Asia series.
Wave 3. The final.
We're finally
final in the trilogy. That's not right. There's 6 of these fucking things.
Well, basically what's happening here is we did the first one, which is the 70s version of Rocky. We're just going straight through. There's really no special thing. We're going to do Rocky 5.
Original Rocky stuff and old pre-Kill Bill. And then we had
the Kill Bill, which drew from the pre-Kill Bill.
And middle Rocky stuff.
Right. And now we're doing the latter 2 Rocky films.
Future Rocky, Rocky in Space.
And then
That's not true.
We're going to take my favorite part of the entire journey,
I'm so
which
excited
is
for this.
Asia's response to Kill Bill.
So perfect.
So
what's Asia going to do now that Kill Bill has come out? They're going to make some extreme movies.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything from this genre, and I am so fucking excited about it. And you haven't seen Rocky.
I haven't seen Rocky.
You're going to get to some epic conclusion of Rocky. So this might be a good time to mention this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again next week. I have not seen the final Rocky film.
Rocky Balboa.
I've been saving the 6th Rocky film. We're not going to do it next time. We're going to do it at the end of the year.
We're doing Rocky 5 next time.
Next time we're doing Rocky 5, which is the last Rocky film I have seen. I stopped at that point once I realized we were doing them on the show, so that I could have a nice little surprise right with you at the end.
All right.
So we're going to do the 5th Rocky movie, and we are going to do Machine Girl.
Oh, the Machine Girl.
Yes, it's going to be great.
Watch more fucking film.
Bye.